Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Giuseppe Fallacara, Associate Professor at Polytechnic of Bari in the south of Italy. I'm teacher of design and stereotomic culture. My research is focused on revisiting stone architecture, with particular theoretical and practical attention to the stereotomy. I'm head of New Fundamental Research Group, a team of Italian architects and academics affiliated to the DICAR of Polytechnic of Bari. We develop research projects which deal with the relationship between innovation and tradition in architecture. The topic of my presentation is Learning by Designing, investigating new didactic methods to learn architectural design. The new method consists in the resumption of ancient stone constructive technique applied to modern architecture and in particular on the stereotomic design logic. Synthesizing, I will show you a new idea of didactic methods in perspective of stereotomic design, learning by designing and making with stone. The interest around stereotomy started to reawaken in the early 1990s within the research about the history of construction. This new favorable cultural climate has allowed rediscovering the discipline, both for its historical value and the unexpressed design possibilities. The diffusion of parametric modeling and digital fabrication tools creates the ideal condition to design and build new theme of stereotomic design, characterized by considerable architectural and geometric complexity. Stereotomy is a know-how for designing. For this reason, it is important to know its history, to preserve it, and to continue to spread it. Speculation about architectural form based on the use of stereotomy marked an historical relevant peak between the 16th through the 18th century, followed by a sudden break at the beginning of the 19th century. From the half of the 18th century, as a result of a change of Weltanschauung, a world vision, classical stereotomy began to show indelible signs of weakness. It was considered unable to produce anything but super-performance structure, which failed to meet required needs. Blondel asserted that a good architect had to prefer verisimilitude naturalism to the pretension arrogance of stereotomy. On the other hand, it is worth mentioning that in those very years, stereotomy was turned into a school subject, thus reinventing itself. This structure was performed at the time in the École du Génie du Métier, one of the first military engineering schools of Europe. From its establishment in 1748, before the coming of Gaspard Monge, the teaching of stereotomy went behind the sheer utilitarian aspect of declining technique. The founder of the École du Génie du Métier explicitly specified, "This art provides such an exact and accurate knowledge of the drawing of the plan and surface and the way of expressing the relief they propose to represent to be considered by the same standard as Euclid elements." The École des Beaux-Arts and the École Polytechnique, representative of the fields of architecture and engineering respectively, share for the beginning of the 19th century the common teaching of the subject of stereotomy, although they have specific curricula and teaching programs. This subject was regarded as the most appropriate in encouraging students to build space and stimulate creativity. In those years, stereotomy became the pivotal subject in the first year of education of both the students of the École des Beaux-Arts and the polytechnicians. We know that the great 19th century architects studied stereotomy during their basic formation, just to name some of the great ones: Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, Anthony Gaudí, Filippo ed Ernesto Basile, and so on. It's clear that this specific knowledge has pushed their project into innovative architectural realization. Right now, is it possible to think that the marvel of French, Spanish, and Portuguese stereotomic construction between the 16th and 19th century are only tied to historical memory? Is it possible that the secret hidden within the magical vault of the City Hall of Arles are no longer applicable to the architecture today? Is it possible to believe that the technical knowledge of such vaulted space of European tradition, and in particular of Mediterranean basin as a cradle of origin of stereotomy, has been lost to us? It is possible to believe that the ancient language of stone architecture has been divorced from the modern structural system and method of construction? I believe not. I believe to the contrary that the need to return to the construction of stereotomic vault, renewed by a modern architectural vocabulary that celebrates the materiality of stone, is of extreme importance today. I firmly support, and thus I want to highlight here, the importance of reintroducing of study of stereotomic culture among the main basic teaching within the architecture and engineering degree courses all over the world, as it was in the past. I emphasize that despite stereotomy has nowadays no place whatsoever in both new building practice and structural plane of education, the subject starts to become a focal point for interesting high-level speculative research, not only the results of partial and isolated research in riverbed of history of construction. Just to name some of the great ones: Philip Bloch at ETH of Zurich, Brandon Clifford at MIT of Boston, José Palacios and Enrique Rabasa at ETSAM of Madrid, my group of research, New Fundamental Research Group, and many more. The aim of this research is to close the distance between practice and theory through the realization of some demonstration project. These stereotomic prototypes describe an effort to demonstrate new application, features, shapes, and unexpected and unexpressed potential of stone for a new contemporary design. The idea is to help transfer and spread newly appearing design technology, education method, and digital modeling supported by information technology in architecture. It is important to note here that most of the formal invention and application, especially for the stone, derive from the knowledge and reflection of the architecture of the past. The study of ancient monuments makes it possible to understand the technical and building expertise and attempt to go further, following the famous phrase of Bernard de Chartres, who said that one could look further by standing on the shoulders of giants. Here we are on Philibert Delorme's shoulders. The study of the past helps and trains us to the beauty. Let's go back to the conceptual basis of the discipline. If we observe the current research on the construction of form or form-finding speculation, we can notice a great attention to the curved space and the vaulted pavilions. I'm sure that there is a constant and innate and perhaps unconscious desire to represent the celestial vault as the ancient idea at the base of the design of vaulted spaces of the sacred classroom of monuments and cathedrals. The vaulted space as well represents the ideal ambit in which to operate the more sophisticated and complex reflection of construction of architecture. This is particularly true for the stereotomic architecture. The curved shape with any mathematical complexity can be designed and built in two basic ways, with a tool that can draw the curved, for example complex or algorithm, or by operation of bending and deforming a simple basic shape. This is totally attuned from a topological point of view. The idea of potential flexibility and manipulation of lithic vaulted space is at the base of the method that links topology to stereotomy. The idea starts from a very simple consideration, that is the observation that most of the vaulted system can be imagined as a discontinuous structure like masonry wall that has been folded or deformed in order to obtain its geometrical final structural shape. For example, a stone wall can be theoretically bent to become a barrel vault, and going on can be bent to become a natural one and thus become a helicoidal barrel vault. The method becomes very interesting when more geometrically complex ashlar is considered instead of individual cubical blocks. At the end of the formation process, the more complex ashlar is assuming conformation that cannot be conceived through a canonical three-dimensional modeling. This method uses the technique of bending thanks to software providing three-dimensional modeling and the parametric variational one, thus basing on a topological geometry and its function of deformation. As already stated, for a topological point of view, a plan and its rolled and deformed final shape are equivalent. This method has been used by me during the first phase of teaching in Design Studio's classroom, with excellent results for designing of numerous new generation voltage system and space, and for the production of expositive prototypes and painter presenting during cultural events since 2005. Starting from the study of this specific traditional ashlar, it's possible to invent new geometry for the tessellation of voltage space, planar configuration, vertical or horizontal, cylindrical shape, and geodetic spherical geometries. A new family of stereoatomic volts set out from the reinvention of stereoatomic culture can be formalized using new digital tools. This perspective aimed to solve some of the most important theoretical issues related to the realization of the voltage space, improving mutual anchorage and therefore the friction among the ashlar of the voltage system, reducing the wall thickness, design subdivision ashlar of the volt both as ornamental and structural behavior, varying the shape and the voltage system in a parametrically way, automatically obtain all the geometrical data both from the manual and electronic cutting CAD, CAM, CNC system for the cutting of the individual ashlar blocks, automatically provide all the numerical data aimed to the structural analysis, rationalize the number of standard ashlar for the construction of any complex voltage structure. Philibert Delorme affirmed that the architectural production based on the use of the stereoatomic culture has been constantly focused on the game of paradox that could ensure a heavy stonework and, in the same time, to seem to be an aerial structure, suspended in air, airborne. In this regard, the celebrated voltages realized in Chateau d'Annet are paradigmatic. The most famous one is the conical vault trompe of the Cabinet du Roi. Despite the heaviness of the stone, such architecture must defy gravity, sending dynamic and antistatic one derived from the ethereal sky. The dialectic contamination between the heaviness of the stone and the lightness of the aerial or pneumatic form of the starry sky, of stereoma or firmament, is the main lever of my research. For many years now, I've been investigating the morphological potential inherent in this assumption as a conceptual foundation for the updating of stereotomy and stereoatomic design. As mentioned, the paradox is a constant in the logic of stereoatomic design, this aiming a formal lightness starting from an opposite material condition. The first poetic paradox of stereotomy was described by Charles Perrault in what I consider the best definition of the intrinsic meaning of the term. The stereotomy is the art of using the weight of the stone to enhance the lightness of the form, thus claiming the combination weight versus lightness in the same architectural voltage system. The desire is to share the stereoatomic design culture all around the world inside the academic method to teach architecture and design process. Thank you very much.